Hey everyone, welcome back to Mia and Simon English Podcast. I'm Mia.
And I'm Simon. Today we're talking about something really personal, something I think everyone has felt at some point.
It's called It's Never Too Late.
Simple words, but a very deep topic.
Before we start, if you're new here, this podcast helps you learn real, natural English through simple, everyday conversations. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss new episodes.
All right, let's get into today's topic. Mia, can I tell you something that's been on my mind lately?
Of course, go ahead.
I met my old college friend last week. She just started learning to paint at 45.
Wow, 45 and starting something brand new.
Right? And my first thought was, isn't that a bit late?
Oh, be honest. Did you actually say that to her?
I didn't say it out loud, thankfully, but I definitely thought it.
I think a lot of people think that, even if they don't say it.
That's exactly what bothers me now. Why did my brain jump straight to too late?
I think it's because we're taught, without even realizing it, that certain things have a deadline.
Like what kind of things?
Like starting a career, learning a language, falling in love, changing your life direction.
Right. There's this invisible timeline everyone seems to believe in.
Exactly, as if life has a schedule, and if you miss the window, that's it.
But who actually made that schedule?
That's such a good question. Nobody real, honestly. It's mostly just social expectation.
So it's not a real rule, it just feels like one.
Exactly, and feelings can be very convincing even when they're not based on facts.
Okay, but let's be fair. Isn't there some truth to timing mattering? Like an Olympic athlete probably can't start training at 50.
That's true. Some very specific paths do have real physical limits.
Right.
But most things in life aren't like Olympic sports. Painting, writing, learning a language, starting a business, these don't have a real biological deadline.
So we're borrowing pressure from extreme examples and applying it to normal life.
Exactly that. We imagine every dream is like professional sports with a strict age limit.
But most dreams are much more forgiving than that.
Much more forgiving. And honestly, some things get better with age, not worse.
Like what?
Like life experience. A person starting to write novels at 50 has decades of stories to draw from.
That's true. A 20-year-old hasn't lived enough yet to write certain kinds of stories.
Exactly. So late starters sometimes have an advantage that young starters simply don't have.
I never thought about it as an advantage before. I only thought about it as a disadvantage.
Most people do. We focus on the years lost, not the years gained in experience.
So my friend's starting painting at 45, she's not behind. She's just starting with a different set of tools.
Exactly. Life experience, patience, maybe even more emotional depth in her work.
That actually makes me feel differently about her decision now.
I think reframing it like that changes everything.
Okay, but here's a harder question. What about the feeling of comparing yourself to people who started young? Like seeing an 18-year-old already successful at something you're just beginning.
Oh, that comparison is brutal. It happens to almost everyone who starts later.
It makes you feel like you wasted years somehow.
I understand that feeling completely, but I think it comes from comparing two different timelines that were never meant to match.
What do you mean?
Well, that 18-year-old's timeline started at 18. Yours started today. Comparing them directly doesn't really make sense.
So it's like comparing a 2-year-old plant to a 10-year-old tree and calling the plant behind.
Exactly that. The plant isn't behind, it's just younger in its own growth.
I like that image a lot.
Every beginning has its own starting line. Comparing different starting lines just creates unnecessary pain.
This is already changing how I think about my own hesitations, honestly.
Same here. I think we've all felt that too late feeling about something in our own lives.
I definitely have. And I think it's worth talking more about where that feeling actually comes from.
Okay, so where do you think it comes from, really?
I think a big part of it is social media, honestly. We see people our age or younger achieving big things constantly.
Right, and it feels like everyone is ahead of you.
Exactly. But we're only seeing the successful moment, not the years of struggle before it.
True, nobody posts day 400 of failing at this.
Exactly. We only see the finished painting, not the messy beginning.
So we compare our messy beginning to someone else's polished result.
Right, and that comparison makes us feel like we're behind, even though we're just seeing a different stage.
This connects to something we talked about before, actually, comparing your whole story to someone else's highlight.
Exactly. It's the same trap, just applied to timing instead of success.
So, besides social media, is there anything else that creates this too late feeling?
I think family and culture play a huge role too. Some families have very fixed ideas about what should happen by a certain age.
Like getting married by a certain age or having a stable career by 25.
Exactly those kinds of expectations. And when someone doesn't follow that path, they're often made to feel like they failed somehow.
Even if they're actually doing something meaningful just on a different timeline.
Right. The timeline itself becomes more important than the actual happiness or meaning of the choice.
That's kind of backwards when you think about it.
It really is. We're measuring life by a clock instead of by whether it feels right.
Okay, but I want to push back a little here. Isn't there some comfort in having a timeline? Like, doesn't it give people direction?
That's fair. I think timelines can be helpful as a rough guide, but harmful when they become a strict rule.
What's the difference between a guide and a rule?
A guide says, this is common but not required. A rule says, if you don't do this by this age, you've failed.
So the problem isn't having some general expectations, it's treating them as unbreakable.
Exactly. Flexibility is healthy. Rigid rules are what create unnecessary suffering.
This makes me think about people who feel stuck because they think they've already missed their chance.
That feeling of being stuck is so common and honestly so unnecessary most of the time.
Why unnecessary?
Because in almost every case, the door isn't actually closed. It just feels closed because of fear or comparison.
So the barrier's more emotional than actual.
Exactly. There's rarely a real physical wall stopping someone. It's usually a mental one.
That's such an important distinction. A mental barrier feels just as strong as a real one, though.
It does feel that strong, yes. But mental barriers can be questioned and changed. Physical walls usually can't.
So the first step is realizing the barrier might just be a belief, not a fact.
Exactly right. And once you question that belief, things start to feel possible again.
I think this is such an important shift in thinking, not ignoring reality, but questioning which parts are actually limits.
Exactly. Separating true limits from imagined ones is honestly one of the most freeing things a person can do.
I want to talk next about real examples of people who started late and still succeeded, because I think stories help this idea feel more real.
So, do you have any real examples in mind? People who actually started late and made it work?
Actually, yes. I read about someone who started coding at 50 and now runs a small tech company.
Wow, 50 is definitely considered late in the tech world.
Exactly. Tech is one of those industries obsessed with young talent.
Right, you always hear about 22-year-old founders and prodigies.
But this person didn't fit that image at all. No coding background, no young genius story.
So what made them succeed despite that?
I think it was simply consistency. They didn't try to catch up overnight. They just kept learning a little every day.
That's such a different approach from the overnight success story we usually hear about.
Exactly. There's no dramatic moment, just quiet, steady progress over years.
I think that's actually the real story behind most late starters, honestly. Not magic, just patience.
Right. Patience isn't exciting to talk about, so it rarely gets attention.
True, we love dramatic stories, but real change is usually slow and boring on the surface.
Do you know any examples yourself, Simon?
Actually, yes. My uncle went back to university at 58 to finish a degree he started decades earlier.
58? That's incredible.
He said the hardest part wasn't the classes, it was ignoring people who questioned why he was doing it at his age.
Oh, I bet people had opinions.
Constantly. Some even asked, "What's the point now?"
What did he say to that?
He said the point was simply finishing something he started, regardless of when it finished.
That's such a powerful reason. Not for a job, not for money, just for himself.
Exactly. And I think that's something we forget. Not every late start needs a big practical reason.
Right. Sometimes it's just about closing a chapter or finally trying something you always wondered about.
Exactly. The value isn't only in the outcome, sometimes it's just in doing it at all.
This makes me think differently about wasted years, too.
How so?
Well, if my uncle waited so long, were those years actually wasted or were they just different years?
I think they were different years, not wasted ones. He lived a full life during that time, too.
So the years before starting weren't empty, they just weren't focused on that particular goal yet.
Exactly. Life doesn't need to move in one straight line toward one single goal the whole time.
That takes so much pressure off. It's not wasted time if you were still living, growing, experiencing things.
Right. The idea that every year must directly build toward one specific achievement is honestly a very narrow way to see life.
I think a lot of people carry guilt about years that felt unproductive in that specific sense.
I understand that guilt completely, but I think it comes from a very limited definition of progress.
What would be a better definition, do you think?
Maybe progress isn't a straight line at all. Maybe it's more like collecting experiences, and eventually, some of them connect in ways you didn't expect.
That's such a beautiful way to look at it. Not wasted, just not yet connected.
So, if progress isn't a straight line, how do we actually deal with the fear that still comes up when starting something late?
That's a great question because understanding the idea intellectually doesn't always remove the fear completely.
Right, you can believe it's never too late and still feel scared to actually start.
Exactly. Fear doesn't disappear just because logic says it should.
So, what actually helps with that fear, practically?
I think one helpful thing is separating the fear of starting from the fear of judgment.
What's the difference?
Fear of starting is about the task itself, like, can I actually learn this? Fear of judgment is about other people's opinions.
Oh, that's a useful separation. I think I mix those two together usually.
Most people do, but they need very different solutions.
How do you deal with fear of judgment specifically?
Honestly, I think it helps to remember that people are usually far too busy thinking about their own lives to focus deeply on yours.
That's true. I really think about other people's late starts for more than a few seconds.
Exactly. We assume everyone is watching closely, but most people barely notice at all.
So a lot of that fear is based on an audience that isn't even paying attention.
Right, an imaginary audience, mostly created by our own minds.
Okay, and what about fear of the task itself? Like genuinely not knowing if you can learn something new at this stage?
I think that's where small starts become really important again.
Like the tiny step idea we talked about before?
Exactly. The same idea applies here. You don't need to prove you can master something in one day.
You just need to prove you can begin.
Exactly. And beginning is a much smaller, much less scary task than mastering.
That reframing really helps. Can I master this feels huge. Can I try this once feels manageable.
Right. And once you try once, trying twice becomes much easier.
This connects to something we said in the mouth training conversation too, actually.
Oh, that's true. Movement builds confidence, not the other way around.
Exactly the same pattern here. Action builds belief. Belief doesn't usually come first.
I think that's actually a theme across so many of our conversations, honestly.
It really is. Waiting to feel ready before acting rarely works. Acting first usually creates readiness.
That's such an important pattern to notice across different areas of life.
Okay, but what about people who feel like they've lost too much time already? Like the fear isn't just about starting, but about catching up.
I think catching up is actually a misleading goal in most cases.
Why misleading?
Because it assumes there's a fixed race everyone's running and you need to reach the same point as others.
But you said earlier that everyone has their own starting line.
Exactly. So catching up doesn't really apply if you're not even in the same race as them.
So instead of catching up, what should the goal be?
Maybe just moving forward from wherever you currently are without measuring against anyone else's position.
Progress relative to yourself, not relative to other people.
Exactly that. It's a much healthier, much more achievable way to measure growth.
I think we're building towards something really important here. Let's bring all of this together in our final part. So, if we had to summarize everything, what would you say is the core message today?
I think it's this. The timeline we're afraid of missing was never really real to begin with.
That's such a strong way to put it. Most of the pressure comes from an imaginary schedule, not an actual limit.
Right, and once you separate real limits from imagined ones, so much more feels possible.
For me, the biggest idea was that comparing timelines doesn't make sense because everyone starts at a different point.
The plant and the tree.
Exactly. A young plant isn't behind, it's just younger in its own growth.
I also loved the idea that wasted years aren't really wasted. They're just different years, still full of life and experience.
Right, and that experience often becomes an advantage later, not a disadvantage.
And we talked about fear, too, separating fear of the task from fear of judgment.
Yes, and realizing most people are far too busy with their own lives to judge yours as closely as we imagine.
That was such a relieving thought, honestly.
It really was. And finally, we talked about action creating belief, not the other way around.
Small steps first, confidence follows, after, not before.
Exactly. Waiting to feel ready often means waiting forever.
So if someone listening today has something they've been putting off because they think it's too late, what would you say to them?
I would say the timeline you're comparing yourself to was never yours to begin with.
That's beautiful.
Your only real starting line is today, wherever you happen to be standing right now.
Not where you think you should be, just where you actually are.
Exactly. And from there, even the smallest step forward counts as real progress.
I think about my friend who started painting at 45 differently now, honestly.
How so?
I don't see her as late anymore. I see her as brave enough to start without a guarantee.
That's exactly it. Starting without guarantees at any age takes real courage.
This conversation really changed something in how I think about my own hesitations, too.
Same here, honestly. I think we both walked into this with quiet doubts of our own.
And we're walking out with a little more permission to just begin.
That's a perfect way to end today's conversation.
So, to everyone listening, whatever it is you've been putting off, remember, it's never too late to begin.
Thanks for listening to Mia and Simon English Podcast.
Keep learning, keep growing, and remember, your timeline is your own.
See you in the next episode.
Bye for now.